Welcome to Post-Industrial Voices, a new series from the Post-Industrial Institute featuring insights from thought leaders, business executives, and innovators shaping the future. In this episode, I have the honor of speaking to Radu Spineanu, the CEO of HumbleOps. Radu has been a founder and executive at multiple successful startups and is now focused on driving manufacturing and operational excellence at HumbleOps. Thanks for joining me today, Radu.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, glad to have you. And I've been really excited about what I've seen about HumbleOps. The solution really is incredible. And for those that know me, know that I've been in the industrial automation, industrial effectiveness and efficiency space for the last decade. And so I know a little bit about what you're doing. And honestly, I find it mind-blowing in a good way. But before we get to that, let's learn a little bit about your background and how you got to the idea of starting HumbleOps.
Of course. HumbleOps is my third company, so I'm much older than I look, hopefully. And my I would say my previous company, we started around 2013, and we went through Y Combinator, and it was a universal API for e-commerce. And I think what happened during our times with building all these e-commerce integrations, of course, at some point you have to touch ERPs. And even as early as 2016, 2017, you kind of have this thought in your head is like, wow, these systems are really bad. Like, why, what is how do you get into this state? How do you get to this horrible state as a society, as a company, that these are these massive valuable companies? And of course, there's a lot of very valuable reasons, which I don't think there's a point because a lot of people know, especially if you're in manufacturing, how you get to this state. But there was nothing I could do about it. It was just something in the back of my head, this problem that kind of frustrated me of like, these are so horrible, there has to be a better way. And it's holding
Yeah.
people back so much. I mean, holding companies back. And so after we sold Honey, we sold our company to Honey, which later sold to PayPal. We, you know, After the pandemic, there was not a lot of things to do, and I was in Europe for a bit, and so I just decided to visit a number of local factories. And obviously, as a tech person, whenever you actually go to the factory for the first time, it's a bit of a shock. And after you get over that shock, I'm sure you know what you mean. It's a completely different parallel world from the cushy world we live in. And uh, I just spent a bunch of time there. I was on the floor and I looked at their systems and just trying to learn as much as possible. And then, obviously at the time, AI was just beginning in 2020. Like everybody, I got access to GPT-3. I went crazy. I understood the possibilities. And what happened was a sort of like a coalesce of ideas where even 3 years ago, we kind of saw the future of where what is happening. Like when when sometimes I talk to people, they say, "Oh, you must have pivoted a couple of times." And they were like, "No, we knew 3 years ago that the current state of the world is going to look like this. We didn't see exactly how we're going to get there. We didn't predict necessarily agents and in tool calling. All of these are the kind of like the details, but we understood that the mechanics of how people are going to interact with software and technology in general is going to change." And and so it was just a random obsession. I would like to say it's just the spark, the seed was my previous company, but why I necessarily picked this, I think is just fell in love with the space.
Yeah, well, I can certainly see it's a differentiated place to position yourself and a company these days because everybody's focused on automating knowledge work of one kind or another using AI, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these, call them industrial systems or manufacturing related systems, are all, quite a ways behind technically from many respects. And it feels to me like there's a less bloody red ocean to play in if you can actually find a way to show you can deliver real value for these companies.
Yeah, I mean, they call it forever problems for a reason. If you go to like any manufacturer, and I'm sure you've heard the term, I feel that like I mean, you saw Humble, I showed it to you, so you understand what we're doing is completely different than any type of traditional software. But at the same time, um, the some components that Humble is touching is literally the something that people have known they've been having the same issue for 20 years. There's been nothing they've been able to solve up until now. And I thought, with AI, you have to do a paradigm shift. It's you not only, it's a similar thing where like the same problem, you have to figure it out in a completely different way. Like it's like sometimes you've been doing the same thing, but it has you're in fact in a local maximum, and then you figure out this new platform, which initially appears like a toy, but actually it takes you to the global maxima. Has the opportunity to develop so much higher, has a higher ceiling than any of the traditional software. And I think any software pre 2023, I would say probably is stuck in a local maximum.
That's a good way to think about it. That makes a lot of sense. Well, so we can stop talking about it too much in the abstract, why don't you describe more specifically what HumbleOps actually does and how it does it?
Of course. So our envision is to be able to help uh, the decision makers at manufacturing manage their factory operations. So we're not necessarily ourselves doing robotics or anything like that, but we are trying to build a layer that will eventually run the business, help run the business. And if you want to think about it, the way we like saying it is right now there's this big distance between the decision maker, the top floor, and the people building the things in the shop floor. And this big distance is because there is this very large middle layer of people that in a way, there exists because making mistakes in manufacturing is incredibly expensive and the processes are very, very complicated. And because that happens, everybody's everybody makes decisions with narrow information, right, in their own worldview. So they need to get together in order to like make any decision that affects multiple departments. But this idea um, of making decision of very little information, having to basically get together to re-litigate the same thing over and over again, makes things incredibly slow and inefficient. So I'm still talking in the abstract, but again, I think you can vouch for the product because you've seen it. That's what we're trying to solve. How can people make better decisions faster? And in a way, the people we most feel are very important that they need to connect and we need to collapse the thing. It's the people on the floor and the people at the top, which I would say that everybody likes to say, every CEO likes to say, I love talking to the floor and I like to walk it every week or something like that. But in reality, when you talk to shop floor workers, like I'm not gonna tell the exact problem to the CEO. Like there's still this disconnect. And so everybody's running on very little information. But now with AI, you're finally able to create a global view of the whole operation. And then you are starting to make the connections that previously were not possible because that's the beauty of AI. It makes connections with across so many fields because it has the ability to process large amounts of context.
And what does HumbleOps actually do with that data when it has all that context across all these different systems?
Our goal is to tell everybody what to do next. Like literally everybody at the factory, from the shop floor worker, the plant manager, all the way to the CEO. Our goal is to tell them what is the next thing you should do right now. What is the most important, high leverage, high priority thing you should be doing right now. And as you saw on the dashboard, we just give people a list of things to do in order.
So to make it even more real, can you walk through one sort of specific use case or example of how Humble might be used to achieve a particular objective?
Of course. Um, for instance, there's so many examples. Like one example, um, I can show you three different systems and they would look completely different because Humble, it is a vertical instance that targets manufacturer, but inside manufacturing, it can target any kind of manufacturing operation because it can adapt to anything. Because it's not like a lot of traditional software is like modules that you can configure or something like that. Humble is different. We provide the building blocks, and then inside of the building blocks, there's a bunch of coding that happens. So to give you an examples, there can be anything from let's monitor this KPI, and this KPI depends on a bunch of MES and a bunch of SharePoint, and then when something triggers, let's look a bunch of device manuals and tell some people some information. It can be just regular scheduling. It can be very deep root cause analysis. In general, what we're trying to do is, even at Humble right now, our North Star is collecting enough information and context about the plant so we can then um, just literally tell everybody what to do. I know I'm repeating myself, but concretely, these are a lot of the points where we start.
No, it makes perfect sense. And as we know, the folks that are watching AI closely, context is king around a lot of this. And context in the case of HumbleOps is a lot to do with the data, which is held in the various systems that HumbleOps integrates to. That must set up some challenges around data quality. What are you finding, and how is HumbleOps able to help maybe address some of these issues of data quality?
Of course, as I mentioned earlier when we did the pre-call discussion, I think that like we don't want to hop in the data quality immediately because that's not where people see outcomes. Whenever we try to talk with some of our customers, we try to find value in a way where we can work with very dirty data. And as we find very dirty data, we help them clean it. I would say that once we have our own wedge or path that we like to take with certain manufacturers, but as we're taking that path, as they're integrating their systems with Humble passively starts monitoring what's happening and surfaces things they have to do to clean the data. Unfortunately, there's things that are more sensitive to cleaning data, like scheduling. Again, like entering bad information in your ERP with like a fat finger, an extra zero, an extra the wrong comma on the setup time, whatever. It can be so many things, and that can happen, and that causes downstream effects down the line. Now, before, the problem was you could be having four people spending 12 hours a day, and they would be your data cleaning, and they would work around all your problems. And I think even with AI, you can work around certain problems, but it's sometimes um, when you have AI for certain components like scheduling, it's not going to go and automatically change your data. So there needs to be a certain uh, phase where the humans go and they confirm every issue that is perhaps dirty, and they clean it, and then it gets better. So I would say that these are the done. There's like things that we begin with are not critical, being the AI can work around it. But then there's things like scheduling where the AI really needs to approve, like if it wants to make a change because it's a mistake.
Yeah. So in many of these scenarios, there's still a human in the loop to provide the ability to ensure that the actions that are taken are appropriate, or the data was good to begin with, that the recommendations are based on. So it's not about, at least at this point, it's not about fully autonomous, enabling fully autonomous lights out operations, but it's about improving the efficiency and effectiveness of your manufacturing system, which involves people in these processes. Do I have that right?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. I think that like the the way one of our advisors, Mike Carroll, says is that oftentimes factories are not capacity constrained, they're thinking constrained, which means oftentimes they, how can I put this? They know the problems they have to do, but there's also like 100 problems. How do you prioritize it? But then even if you know the 100 problems, how do you actually fix? You know you have a problem that your can has some dents, but how do you fix it? Do you need to get a specialist, or do you have that information in-house? Do you need to capture more data to figure out the root cause, right? And so you have these multivariate systems where there's so many things that possibly moving. How do you even know what to do next? So then you have people, like let's say this person, when you're planning, you're cleaning data as you're doing the scheduling, but that adds 2 hours to how you're doing you're doing planning. And then perhaps the bigger the thing, you add more people, you need the problem. If you're the CEO, they come as like, I need more person. I'm working 12 hours a day. But the CEO doesn't necessarily, it's like, why are you working 12 hours a day? Well, the data is messy and we have to do this, but nobody is actually going to act on why
Yep.
the data is messy. So I think Humble gives people permission to act on um, problems that they had for a very long time that they can now resolve very fast.
Right, right. The website talks frequently about the coding aspect of HumbleOps and the software that codes itself, which touches on the use of agents in the system as well. Maybe talk a little bit about the connection or relationship between the coding aspect of what HumbleOps does to achieve its goals, because this isn't just a sort of an out-of-the-box end user application that's 100% deterministic and it does, if A and B happens, then X and Y is the result. There is the element of this agentic and intelligent coding capability built in. Am I right about that?
Of course, and you've seen it. But but leaving that aside, sorry, joking aside, the I had a meeting earlier today with like a bunch of people that are younger to manufacturing, and they were like, "Well, Radu, what I've discovered is that each manufacturing plant is completely different, and that is once you are in manufacturing for a while, you realize the reason SAP is such a monster, like I don't know, 400K to 800K table, 3 million forms. Right? Everybody's such the horribles of this is that people historically have tried to create a software that supports every use case in the world. The problem is, one, the more you abstract, the more you disconnect from the reality. Meaning, like, the more layers of abstraction you come from how you work, because you want to make it for so many people, the less you can do with it. And so people go to Excel. And also the reason is the more complexity you add as a one piece to software, like you end up in a software, they're going to use like 10 to 15% of their functionality. It's going to be incredibly confusing to use. And you just don't know what half of the field is. And you have to, contort your business to fit in that software's worldview. And so also like giving people just a cloud code where they can code stuff by themselves. And don't get me wrong, like Humble supports a bunch of that. You can create infinite amount of software. The problem is you still create a series of point systems that are not necessarily connected to one another. You're just creating more software and more things to manage, leaving aside the security implications of it. And so we have our unique flavor where how do we, the art of we spend so much time of you saw on the UX and the interfaces, we spend so much time, or where's the line between what you give and what you generate, right? What comes pre-built and what comes generated. And that we've spent years just thinking about that. And it's a line that we keep on moving depending on how we see people using it. And so I would say that the reason we're able to we love the edge cases is because we go in and it's like we can keep your existing systems. We'll take on the edge cases, the messy world, everything that needs to happen. And even right now, if you see the use cases we're having, that they're so different. And nothing is better than someone showing you their very complicated thing that they did, some hack that they did in their ERP for whatever reason. And it's like, can you support it? It's like, yeah, sure, just give it to us, right? In a way, this is a bit similar to Palantir, but we are not like Palantir in the sense that Palantir is getting a lot of traction with a lot of factories, and I think it's an absolutely amazing company. We are pretty much complementary to even Palantir because they're very much focused on the data. We're focused on the workflows and the people. And so if they're focused much more on how do we connect the data and all these plants, etc., we are focused, each Humble instance is one plant. We want to focus on managing the physical plant.
Really interesting. Speaking of Palantir, obviously one of the reasons they're famous is they if not originated, at least they leaned heavily into the forward deployed engineer concept. Talk a little bit about what a deployment practice might look like to get HumbleOps running inside a manufacturing operation.
Thank you. I mean, it's a good question. It's an amazing good question, and that is something we're learning as we're learning just as we're doing the work. I would say that our obsession right now is to find a repeatable wedge that takes very little from that we provide immense value with very little effort. And we've talked about it, and I'm not going to mention it here, but we have our own path that we can take um, manufacturers from 0 to like 1 week, 2 weeks, where we can provide them some value with very little effort on their end, just to prove that we can do a good job. But as we're doing the initial wedge, whatever that is, uh, Humble learns about how the factory works. And then it passively starts monitoring everything that's happening and immediately starts surfacing insights they've not thought about. And, they can act. We figure out, first of all, we've monitored them and they're incredibly accurate. But what is also an amazing feeling is that for anything else, if you need to use Humble at the most simplest functionality that we can, it is, imagine you have like an assistant that's going to flag you things that you should be looking at. And you can tell the assistants, no, I don't care about this, I care about this. This was a very good response. But there's a certain level of safety. There's this system that can run 24/7 that never sleeps, that just monitors your system, like burns tokens and gives you information and decisions and tries to put you towards your outcomes and KPIs. And that is safety, and manufacturers care a lot about safety for good reason. And manufacturers want to catch problems before they happen, because by the time they happen, it's oftentimes disastrous. And and so when we go in, we like to tell them, we are going to help you. We're going to start this passive monitoring of everything that's happening. But then the more you feel comfortable, each win that you do unlocks the next win, right? Each thing, if you do root cause analysis, you immediately unlock workflows because you're going to want to use Humbles to fix those issues, right? So it becomes incredibly more powerful. And then as you waste more time, Humble find more anomalies, then you unlock other things like scheduling. And it's just this very nice guided path. And there's so many things to improve in manufacture. There's so many things to improve. And there's so many low-hanging fruit. And I think if there's one message I have is like, for the most passive functionality, it's so easy to start.
I can imagine. Well, okay, so maybe to wrap it, let's take it up to the 200,000 foot level. You discuss on the website and some of your writing about creating HumbleOps enabling a super intelligent manufacturing operation. What's your vision for what an intelligent factory will look like over the next 3 to 5 years, or whatever time frame you think is appropriate?
I like that you said 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, you're an accelerationist. Um, or a doomer. You should tell me.
I'm not a doomer.
I so Probably the future state is you go to work, whether you're the work on the shop floor, whether you're the CEO, and you put an earbud in, and you have a voice on the other side that cares about the organization, sees everything, and just again tells you what to do next and why. That is the vision. The vision is um, that you will, you know, you combine AI and humans. What the humans are very good at, which is making the final decision, with what AI is to seeing everything, and then having these like supercharged organization where you can make a decision like you should do this. Here's why you should do it. Perfect. Did it work? No. Okay, let's change this. Right? How can you make fast, good decisions? It's quite simple.
Right. Well, I'm a strong believer in the future vision you just outlined, a human first or human centric vision. At the same time, we can absolutely make these kinds of operations much more efficient and effective, and create a great future for all. So thank you for your work on this, Radu. HumbleOps does truly look incredible. And like I said, I've been in this space for 10 years at least now, actually longer than that. And I was very impressed with what you're working on. For more interviews and updates related to the topics that we've discussed, please check out the Post-Industrial Institute and the Post-Industrial Forum via the links nearby this video. And again, thank you, Radu. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.